Next up, as drought and famine threaten the Horn of Africa, one farmer fights to guard her livelihood against a changing climate. See who's working in Africa and around the world to prove that hunger isn't inevitable in an all-new report from Oxfam America and viewchange.org.
ViewChange is about people making real progress in tackling the world's toughest issues. Can a story change the world? See for yourself in ViewChange, Africa's Last Famine.
The Horn of Africa is in crisis. This season, the rains failed throughout much of the region, triggering in places the worst drought in 60 years. The result? 13 million people affected, 1.8 million Somalis alone displaced. Families losing hundreds of thousands of animals they need to survive. 8 groups and governments around the world have scrambled to help, but with 750,000 people facing starvation, experts find themselves asking one question over and over: how can we make sure this famine is the last? The answer to that question might be captured in a single idea: resilience. For rural farmers, surviving this drought is the priority. Trying to build reserves for the next is overwhelming. But the public and private sectors have some new ideas to give rural families financial security to outlast the next emergency. Northern Ethiopia has been spared the worst of the crisis, but farmers here have seen their share of drought in the past. In one village, Adiha, farmers are experimenting with a new program, one that lets them trade work for insurance against bad weather. Oxfam America has been following one farmer there for 2 years. Writer Coco McCabe brings us her story.
In my mind's eye, I see Medin Reda as I saw her one afternoon in Adiha a few months ago. She's heading to her field of teff. The shoots are new and fragile, but the tiny seeds they eventually produce will help feed her family. The rain has come, but the harvest is never certain. As a writer for Oxfam America, I'm often sent to cover humanitarian emergencies. But in 2009, I went to northern Ethiopia to report on a pilot program designed to help farmers cope with drought. And it was on that visit that I first met Medin. I'd gone to her village to learn about teff and the challenges of growing it in a changing climate. Teff is Ethiopia's staple grain, rich in nutrients. Farmers across the country cultivate it, and it serves as the basis of a bread called injera, much loved in Ethiopia. It's flat, like a pancake, and made from fermented batter, which gives it a slightly sour taste. But in this rugged region of Tigray, where Medin lives, drought is always a worry. Coaxing crops from the ground is never easy, and teff is labor-intensive. Though the rain was falling regularly in early August, no one knew if it would continue to the harvest. If the rain fails, so do the harvests, and that means families don't eat. It's that constant uncertainty that farmers like Medin live with, an uncertainty that can turn instantly grave, because here, poverty leaves no room for mishaps.
ألا سالسكا زرقي مداريا غيركا زي زرقي مداريا صبق خنياتو تطري ولهم زي طعمي زي مداريا إنا غيرنا صبق زرق غيرنا إنا زرقنا يو صبق جن قلوتي حتى تي بزح قلوتي يوسد يتحان يشولل يلوس كأم مقوي سرح صبق مقوي خاع خلنا يوتد طعم صبق وانا صوري مقوي.
A single mother with just 2 of her 5 children still at home, Medin lives in a small compound surrounded by a stone wall. She and one of her daughters hold every stone for their house here. I listen to the pounding in her mortar and the wind stirring the stalks of corn and wonder, how does uncertainty shape the life of a family, of a community? One answer is to migrate, like Medin did during the time of a terrible famine that hit Tigray and other regions of Ethiopia in 1984. To survive, she fled to Sudan for a year with her young son and infant daughter. But another answer is in the stones of Medin's compound. It's in her carefully weeded fields and in the trust she puts in her children. The answer is work. A determination to build, to plant, to harvest, to thrive, step by step. That work ethic runs deep in Ariha, and for some of its farmers, hard work produces a cushion of cash. Those farmers have access to irrigation. Their harvests are guaranteed, whether it rains or not. But for Medin, who doesn't have the benefit of irrigation, all of her work has gone into the day-to-day survival of her family. She's never had the luxury of a cushion. That's a reality that poor farmers around the world face every day. What do they do if drought kills their crops or floods wash out their fields? How do you help people soften those blows and build their resilience? That's what drove Oxfam and a group of partners to develop an initiative aimed at helping small farmers build their resilience. What they came up with not only improves farmers' access to credit, it provides them with insurance, something many of us in the developed world take for granted.
Now, everything you see around you here is insured, but in many parts of the world, there is no insurance. So that service, insurance, is a core building block of what we call rural resilience. In doing this work, people often express doubts that we'll be able to address the underlying causes of the crises that we see again and again, like that today in the Horn of Africa. In order to do so, we need to address the core issue, which is poverty. One way to think of poverty is continual crisis. We all need to be able to plan for the future, and that's the point of this initiative, to give people the opportunity to have confidence going forward.
More than 13,000 farmers in Tigray bought weather insurance this year. Some, like Gebru Kase, also have access to irrigated land. Still, the insurance is a good investment, he told me.
Insurance مجزأنا ياو سجم جزية سجم يجورن بي أو محله تاع نندلي سناي زوينا ندلي عشوا تمسجل محله تاع سيخوني يويلو بو أمين وقت أنا أتوقلو أمين اللي يلا يروسر بناي خرط الله.
But what happens when people like Medin are too poor to pay for a premium with cash? They can trade their labor for insurance. Mengesha Gabriel-Michael, a program officer for the Relief Society of Tigray, told me that farmers themselves came up with that solution.
This idea came from the farmers, who usually use the indigenous language of the farmers. So in every aspect of our project, our farmers are really participatory.
I followed Medin to a nursery one day, where she selected a shawl full of tree seedlings to plant in a nearby watershed. The goal was to help to conserve the soil so farmers could plant there. The community work was part of her contribution toward her insurance.
آتيو سوونا أمينه لعلي شو عتقنا سويتي يخونوا دقة آتيو خحسازي سيتقمنا أيله أمينه آتيه.
But even before a payout, there is a tangible benefit, and it has to do with a new feeling of confidence this initiative has inspired. Medin's hard work was paying off. I could see her corn was growing tall. She owned a small herd of goats, and both her youngest daughters were in school. Something Medin never had the advantage of herself. And because of the insurance, the fruits of her labor were not at risk. This time, when she gets ahead, she can stay ahead. I was thinking about the miles of dirt track she treks each day to fetch water, to reach her fields, so many steps to ensure her family's security. I can't forget the answer Medin gave when I asked how she was 2 years after we first met. Hope was the answer she gave me. We have hope, Medin said.
So far this year, Medan has been lucky. Ariha has gotten enough rain, and farmers are predicting a good teff harvest. But many other Ethiopians have been less fortunate, and most don't yet have the option of an insurance policy. So was weather insurance the silver bullet for avoiding these crises before they hit? According to Oxfam, it's part of a larger plan to give farmers a cushion when they need it most. As this animation explains, it's all a matter of managing risk.
925 million people on our planet are hungry. That's more than the population of the US, Canada, and the European Union combined. And within the next 4 decades, up to 200 million more people could face hunger as a result of climate change. Climate change brings uncertainty. Sometimes too much rain or too little. It means unpredictable harvests. And for many farmers, a healthy harvest is their only source of food and income. Without reserves, one failed harvest could mean families go hungry, kids drop out of school, and people sink deeper into poverty, making it harder for families to plan for the future. Through a new partnership, Oxfam and the World Food Programme are tackling that problem together with Swiss Re. The program is called R4, the Rural Resilience Initiative. It gives rural families the opportunity to manage their own risks, harvest to harvest. It's based on the fact it costs less to manage risks than it does to provide relief in a crisis. The Rural Resilience Initiative. It encourages farmers to save, it improves their access to loans, and it provides them with a common tool many people in developed countries take for granted: insurance. The insurance provides farmers with compensation for their crops when rain fails to fall. Originally called Harita, the program started in Tigray, Ethiopia, with REST, one of the founding members. It offered weather insurance for 200 households that conventional wisdom said were too poor to afford it. The initiative allows the poorest farmers to pay for their insurance by working on community projects that improve local agriculture, reduce the impacts of disaster, and help them adapt to a changing climate. Through Insurance for Work, they build irrigation systems, which help crops thrive during dry spells. They make compost to fertilize the fields. They reclaim the degraded environment by planting trees. And since work is one of a farmer's surest assets, by trading it for insurance, farmers with little else can build and protect their future. Farmers can grow their savings to cushion the hard times. They can secure the credit they need to buy the equipment and drought-resistant seeds that promise bigger and better crops. They can launch small businesses that will help feed their families and ensure their children stay in school. So when you invest in rural resilience, you're helping farmers, their families, and their communities become stronger. What started with 200 households has reached 13,000 over 3 years and will expand to 3 more countries, growing village by village, border to border. Managing risks costs less than managing a crisis. Rural resilience. It just makes sense.